Welcome to the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Grothoff, along with my wife, Gina. Our goal is to give voice to the hidden mind of obsessive-compulsive disorder, better known as OCD. In this podcast, we are interviewing yet another person dealing with OCD either professionally or personally. So stay with us for this impactful conversation. We would love to have your comments or to have you as a guest, or if you wish to tell your OCD or anxiety story, please visit us at invisiblewheelchair.com. So let's find out more about who we're interviewing today. Today, I am excited to introduce to you Halli Gomez. Halli Gomez writes for children and young adults and works at her local independent bookstore. She has written several stories with neurodivergent characters, including her young adult novel, List of 10. When no one is looking, she skates through the house and talks to dogs like they are human. When people are looking, she enjoys reading, outdoors, and breaking out of escape rooms with her family. Halli lives in North Carolina with her husband, 2 boys, and 2 dogs. And today, in today's interview, we're going to be talking about Halli's OCD and her Tourette's, which is something we haven't discussed in this podcast, so I'm excited to get to it. Let's get to that podcast now. Now, before we get to that interview, let's hear a word about our sponsor.
Today I'm here to talk about Q Science's sleep spray. Q Sciences has a number of different sprays. There's a melatonin sleep spray that contains melatonin, 5-HTP, and L-theanine. We've used other melatonin products to help our children with falling asleep. Melatonin is something that occurs naturally in our body that helps us quiet and calm down for sleep. And yet I really feel like I've seen a difference in the spray versus other products. Our youngest is here to talk about it. What things did you like better about the spray versus the other things?
I don't like the chew tablets because they leave like a weird taste, and they're mainly like they also have like you get bits in your teeth.
Okay, so Q Science's spray.
It's a lot better, I'd say. The taste is pretty decent and it works well.
Okay. I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
Simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, or visit invisiblewheelchair.com and find out more information there.
there are a lot of supplement products out there, yet you want one that's of good quality. Check out Q Sciences for your family.
And now, let's get to that interview. Well, Halli, thank you so much for being part of the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, and I welcome you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, you know, I've been kind of excited about doing this podcast because I have yet to really talk to about the idea of the Tourette's, the tics that go along a lot of times with OCD. You know, I haven't experienced that as far as with my kids with their OCD. They don't have that issue. So I'm looking forward to it. What I wanted to start out with first was, though, if you wouldn't mind just kind of telling us a little bit about your story of how it came about for you, how the OCD came to you, and all of that.
Well, I was officially diagnosed when I was about 9. When I was 8, and I don't remember exactly, but my mom tells me the story a lot. When I was 8, I told her that I wanted to die. And so she took me to a psychologist. She took me to several. And there was one man who recognized the tics, the movements, that kind of thing that I do. And he suggested this might be Tourette syndrome and you need to take her to a neurologist. So that's how it first started. And then I was officially diagnosed at about 9 years old.
Okay. And did they come together? I mean, did OCD come from the tics, or did they kind of come both at the same time?
So they're two separate disorders. They're frequently found together, though. People who have Tourette syndrome usually have what they call comorbid, so OCD, ADHD, that depression, those other kinds of disorders, and so it all kind of came blasting in at one time.
And you say blasting in, did it come in are you familiar with Pandas and Pans?
Yes, a little bit, yes.
Was it something like that? Is that how the OCD showed itself in a pretty on a quick onset or sudden onset, as they say?
Yes, as far as I remember, it was all pretty quickly.
And do the tics, do they tie into the compulsions, or do they start the compulsions, or do they how are they related to that?
It's very confusing, actually, to be in my head at times, to know what's happening and what comes first. And I think they all kind of come together. I think it in my brain, at least, I wouldn't want to go against what a doctor says, but in my brain, at least, I think compulsions and Tourette are really close together. The tics with Tourette are involuntary, but kind of with the compulsions, you have thoughts that you can't get rid of and movements that you can't get rid of, and the more you try, the more they come. So I feel they're very, not that they're one and the same, but they're very closely tied, in my brain.
So to understand for the audience, being that this is audio, but can you kind of say what you go through with the tics? What happens for you?
Well, you can see me, so but for those who can't, I have a neck tic where I move my neck and my head back and forward and to my shoulder and to the front. I grind my teeth. I have tics in my hands and my wrists where they move certain ways, depending on like what clothes I'm wearing. Sometimes that will trigger a tic, like with my shoes, to like move my feet around if I wear bracelets, which I don't anymore. It would trigger in my wrist to move my wrists around. So like constant moves. Some part of my body, at least one part of my body, is in constant motion all the time.
I would imagine that has to be very frustrating to always be having to move parts and so how well, do you feel like you've had this for quite a long time now? Do you feel like it's changed, or you've handled it differently now than you did before, and better than you did before?
I'm a lot more accepting than I used to. Obviously, that comes with time and age. Like I said, I've had this since I was 8, and I'm now 52. So it's been a long time. I understand it. I understand it a lot more. It's frustrating still, painful still, but I haven't let it hold me back. So everything that I've wanted to do, I haven't let it hold me back, whether, and I've done a lot of, I've had a lot of jobs, or a few jobs that I'm like in front of people, and I'm in front of the class, and I haven't let it hold me back at all. I still will do what I want to do, which has come with time and understanding and acceptance.
Do you feel like you have been treated differently by people? Because you're a professional writer, and we're going to talk about your books in a few minutes. But do you feel like it has hindered you, or people have treated you differently because of what they see and what they know about you?
Well, definitely growing up in school, people treated me different. People were mean. People, talked, I was going to say behind my back, but they would say things to my face as well. So definitely in school growing up, it was a big part of how people saw me and how people treated me. I still get, strange looks sometimes when I'm out, even from adults. I have to admit, I look strange. I do strange things. So, it's understandable. It's not what I would want, but I do look a little strange sometimes. There are many people, though, definitely throughout my personal life and my professional life, who have not made it an issue. So, I mean, they haven't ignored it, because you can't ignore it. But they invite me into their business. They, put me in the front of the class. So I've met some really fabulous people who have given me great opportunities that I never thought I would get.
Because now you're married. Do you have kids?
I have two boys.
2 boys. And how long have you been married?
Next February, so in a couple months, will be 29 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. And how was it when you were like dating? Your husband apparently obviously is accepting of it, but how did it go? When you first met him, and did he? How did he handle it?
He was fabulous, and still is. It was never an issue for him. I met him through a friend, so he had been around me for a little while before we started dating. But it was never an issue for him. He knows, like, for example, when we go out to dinner, I like to have a particular seat. And so he lets me sit first and make sure, okay, is this a good seat for you? So he's learned, how to make me more comfortable. And in terms of having kids, because Tourette's is genetic, it was not an issue for him. It was more of an issue for me, but not an issue for him. Like, it wasn't something that, was terrible, and we shouldn't have kids. It's like, let's, we love each other. Let's have kids, and, we'll deal with whatever happens.
And are they showing any sign? Do any of the kids have the issue?
One of them has a very, very, very mild case. And I'm thrilled that it's, because in boys, it's more prevalent in boys. Mm-hmm. But we were very, very fortunate. Just a very, very mild case for him. Like, if you didn't know, you wouldn't know.
That's good. That's good. So You've written books. You're a writer. I read the list of 10, which was like I told you before. It was a wonderful book, and it brings in the OCD and the Tourette's into the book, but it's not a biography of yourself or. Um, so what inspired you to want to write? Now, I don't know if that was the first that wasn't the first book you did, but what inspired you to start writing? And then also you're putting in the OCD and the Tourette's into this book. I don't know if you do it to the other books, but can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I started writing about 10 years ago when we used to live in Florida, and when we moved to North Carolina, I didn't have a job. So I'd always been a big reader. So I thought, okay, let me try to write a book, which is crazy. And because you wrote a book. So like I say that, like it's the easiest thing in the world, and it's the hardest thing in the world. So I started writing, and I've written, so published, I have a short story, a middle grade, and a young adult novel. So middle grade is like middle school, and then young adult will be for high school. And all three have characters that have Tourette and or OCD. Just to my purpose with having characters like that is just to bring awareness. I've read a lot of books over the years that they don't accurately depict the disorders. And there's a lot of talk in the diverse writing community about, having misrepresentation and adding to stereotypes and adding to ignorance. And I wanted to portray accurately what life is like, the good and the bad in all the stories. So that's one reason that I, added those disorders to all my characters, or a character in all my books.
Yeah, and I think you did a really good job of depicting it. I mean, I read over it going, yeah, okay. Especially around the OCD part anyway. The tics part, I was not something I've had personal experience with my kids, but I could definitely see it, and how you portrayed it was pretty on spot, I would say. So, what was the first book you wrote?
The first book I wrote was a little treasure hunt pirate story, which I'm actually revising now. So I've taken it out of the drawer and I'm revising it now. But it was about a boy who goes on a treasure hunt to save his family's business. So hopefully that'll. It's a boy with OCD. So hopefully that's a boy that will, come out, on the bookshelves. And so, all kids can read it and, know that no matter what or who they are, they too can go on a treasure hunt, and they can, do whatever they dream of doing.
Yeah, well, I like, because your books really are not, they're not just talking about OCD. They're giving a story, which makes it easier to read and makes it easier. So you're still getting the message out, but you're doing it through a story, which I think is really cool. And is Tourette's? Is it something that? Because with OCD, I know it's not what I would call curable. It's manageable. How would you describe Tourette's? Does it have a manageable place? It sounds like you might have gotten somewhat to a manageable place with it, or it isn't. Is it curable, or is there hope of cure to it, or?
There is no hope of cure. Well, there's no hope of cure right now. They're doing research all the time. It's it's manageable through different ways. Medication is one. For the neck tic that I have, I had a doctor recommend like Botox injections, which I decided not to do for the Botox and the injections. So medication is one. There's like biofeedback also, which helps manage it a little bit. A lot of de-stress type of things, just because the more stressed you are, the more you tic. So a lot of de-stress management. So, everything works a little bit different for different people. But again, not curable, but in some cases manageable.
So I'll ask you this too, because I put this out to most of the people I talk to is, what would be your advice or your recommendation to somebody that just realizing now that they have Tourette's, maybe the OCD behind it or one of the other disorders, but what would you tell them or advice would you give them?
The biggest piece of advice I would give, actually two parts. One, to find a doctor who is knowledgeable about the subject. I mentioned at the beginning that I had been to several doctors and nobody understood, what was happening. Of course, that was in the 70s and it wasn't as well known as it is now. But there are still a lot of doctors that are, maybe they've heard of it, but they've never treated patients. They've never done research. So number one is to find a doctor that is knowledgeable about it. And that way you can have informative conversations about the options. Because again, there are several options for managing it, but medication is not right for everybody. So you don't want a doctor who's just ready to, pump you with medication. Mm-hmm. The second, and really just as equally important, is to find a support system. As I said, my husband and I have been married for a long time, and he's absolutely wonderful. But he doesn't know what I know. He doesn't feel what I feel. And he can't really understand what it's like and what it feels like mentally and physically. So finding a support system. There are, I know Facebook is Facebook. People love it or hate it, but there are some good support groups on Facebook that are closed. Either there are several. There's ones for just adults. There's one for parents. There's some open. There's open ones like for North Carolina, where we live, or just different regions. Mm-hmm. And they're a wealth of information. You also get the opportunity to share your stories, good and bad. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're having a really bad day and you just want to vent, and you want to know other people understand what you're going through. Or you're having a really fabulous day and you want to share all the good things that are happening. And those are really important for other people to read, because it's important to understand that you can succeed. You can go out, you can make your dreams come true, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it. So a support group is right up there with a great doctor.
Is there a foundation, a main organization?
There is the Tourette Association of America, and they do a lot. They are involved in research. They're involved in raising money. They have youth ambassadors. They have celebrity spokespeople who come in and help raise money. They facilitate support groups and have medical information. They have just information for everybody. So if you're a family member, if you're the individual, if you're a teacher, a professional, they'll have information for everybody. So yeah, the Tourette Association of America is fabulous.
And I'll let my audience know that I will have that up as a resource on the page. Plus, I'll have all this information up there. So last thing for Halli, what's the best way for anybody who wants to find out more about Halli?
I have everything on my website. So my website is holligomez.com, HALLIGOMEZ.com. I have my books there, obviously, but my links to Instagram and Facebook, Twitter, and if I have a contact page. So if you want to email me, it's right there and it goes to my email. If you have any questions or, you want to share stories or whatever you like, my email is on there as well.
Well, and I'll mention too, is if they're a young writer and they need help with that, you very much do that part of it too, correct?
I do, yes.
Because
yes.
I'm hoping that we're going to get together pretty soon for finishing up my book and getting it done. I'm keeping my fingers crossed within the next couple months here. So Halli, this has been wonderful, very informative, and I have to say, I so much appreciate and admire you for the fact of being open, to be able to express this and talk about it, and be vulnerable enough to talk about it. So I really thank you so much for doing this, because I think your words and what we've talked about is going to be an inspiration for others to have some hope and some vision for themselves. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And thank you for this opportunity. It's again, this is a support system that we all need to have, and you sharing your stories and allowing people to share stories on your podcast is a huge help. So thank you. Thank you.
This concludes this podcast. We hope you will subscribe if you haven't already. Remember, we would love your comments, or if you have a story to tell, we want to put it up on the podcast. Simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com to do that. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest, we love guests. So simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com and contact us from there. Gina and I are here to help you or your family get to a better place naturally. Simply visit focusedhealthyfamily.com for more information. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Keep tapping and focusing forward for a better way.